You're on the Bible Forum. It is Christmas weekend, December 23rd, 2018. We're going to have Christmas in a couple days. I want to talk to you about the earth. The earth is alive. You knew that. But the evolutionary model that is popular, taught in all of our schools, is supposedly the last word on how this thing came about and what it's all about. That model is built on the idea that somewhere in the long ago, an explosion took place in the universe. No one yet has been able to explain where the material came from that created all of this, or what these materials were like, and how a very small amount of something could explode into this large something and be as intricate as it really is, and they don't know why. They have their theories, and you have to keep in mind that the evolutionary model is a theory. It's not fact. From this explosion that created our universe has sprang a sun with a solar system revolving around it. One of those planets was situated so as to spontaneously produce life as we know it. It was the heat of the sun, no doubt. And this life grew from microscopic life all the way up to sentient creatures like you and me. And from those two original sentient creatures, over time has come all the human beings we now know about. Now, if that sounds like the Bible, some of it is Bible, it's because there's no other way to explain it. You have to have male and a female. They have to be humanoid. They had to come up together at the same time somehow to make this happen. But in the evolutionary model, these human beings were victims of the atmosphere and of the topography of the earth for millions of years. Then, unexplainably, it is a theory after all, there sprang a form of human being that was able to harness the resources and deal with the weather so as to form a dominant species. Now, children are taught today in America that life can evolve given enough time. This is a statement that is made without any scientific support. Nowhere in science, in nature, does this happen. They are taught that if just given enough time, a monkey and a typewriter could punch keys at random and eventually type Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. However, time does not make impossible things possible. As an example, a computer was programmed in an attempt to arrive at the simple 26-letter alphabet we know and love. And after 35 trillion attempts, it has only arrived at 14 letters correctly. So what are the odds that a simple single-cell organism, origin unknown, could evolve given the complexity of more than 60,000 proteins and 100 different configurations, bringing them all together in just the correct places? Well, the odds will never be achieved, not in eternity. Time does not make impossible things possible. Of course, these same children are now being taught there is no absolute right, no absolute wrong. And of this, their teachers, preachers, are absolutely certain. They're taught that what they think to be right is only right for them. They can't impose that on someone else. And all of that until they come to the evolutionary model. a model that defies both logic and science. The evolutionary model is a faith system. No one ever saw it. No one's ever duplicated it. We just believe it. Often the evolutionist is pointing to the survival of the fittest to prove his theory. But why would a wingless bird begin to develop a wing? The early wings would allow the bird to fly, but only when they are fully developed. Until then, they're impediments. Why would the bird continue to improve on something that is so obviously a problem? And do that for millions of generations? Such a theory violates the obvious survival of the fittest principle. This is the irrationality of our system. Did you know there are no intermediate or transitional species of dinosaur in the fossil record? Well, yeah, but we haven't unearthed them all yet. We see and we hear of a creature they call the Cetiosaurus, with a long neck allowing it to eat leaves and fruit off trees. And they continued doing that until it was discovered that the neck bones of this particular dinosaur would not allow it to raise its head like that. They were putting one together in a museum when they noticed this. He was a plant eater, something for which his long neck was a natural disadvantage? Oops. Darwin himself admitted the fossils of transitional links between species would have to be found in order to prove his theories. And to date, not one traditional fossil exists. Transitional. What we have are fossils of animals that appear similar, but are not transitional. They are individual. And there's just so much more. The reality? The earth is far more alive than previously thought. That according to something called a deep life study that reveal a rich ecosystem beneath our feet that is almost twice the size of all the world's oceans. Despite the extreme heat, the lack of light, no light, despite the minuscule nutrition and intense pressures, scientists estimate that this subterranean biosphere is teeming with between 15 and 23 billion tons of microorganisms, hundreds of times the combined weight of every human on the planet. The researchers at something called Deep Carbon Observatory say the diversity of underworld species bears comparison to the Amazon or to the Galapagos Islands. But unlike those places, the environment is still largely pristine because people have yet to probe most of the subsurface. They say it's like finding a whole new reservoir of life on Earth. We are discovering new types of life all the time. So much of life is within the earth rather than on top of it. So said Karen Lloyd, an associate professor at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. The team combines 1,200 scientists from 52 countries in disciplines ranging from geology and microbiology to chemistry and physics. A year before the conclusion of their 10-year study, they will present an amalgamation of concurrent findings before the American Geophysical Union's annual meeting, a meeting that opens either this week or last week. I don't know what the timing of the article was. Samples were taken from boreholes more than 5 kilometers deep and undersea drilling sites to construct models of the ecosystem and estimate how much living carbon it might contain. The results suggest 70% of the Earth's bacteria and archaea exist in the subsurface, including a barbed bacteria that lives in sulfuric springs and a single-celled organism found at 121 degrees centigrade in hypothermal vents at the bottom of the sea. Darwinian theory has also invaded our social structure. You see, if we are simply animals in a state of transition, who's to say the bisexual is not just a beginning species? More disruptive are the spiritual implications. For whom did Jesus die? And why? If we are simply animals in a fight for survival, why the rigid moral standards? Who's to say what is right and what is wrong? When a human being is brutally murdered, it's usually by one who is bigger, stronger, more ruthless, or better armed. Who's to say that's not the next iteration of humanity? We say, well, we don't think like that. No, we don't, do we? Our rules, our laws are not oriented that way. But what if there are two societies vying for dominance? And of course there are. But what if this is simply an evolutionary process?